Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 10th June 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States. The US and China concluded 2 days of trade negotiations in London, achieving a framework deal that aims to resolve ongoing tariff disputes, with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick expressing optimism about addressing concerns over critical minerals and magnets. Widespread protests erupted across the U.S., including demonstrations in New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Omaha, and Seattle, as a response to the Trump administration's intensified immigration raids. Thousands gathered in New York City's Foley Square to protest immigration and customs enforcement, ICE. Adding to the immigration crackdown, the Trump administration ordered the deployment of 4,000 National Guard members and 700 Marines to Los Angeles, despite objections from local officials and the California governor. US Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee declared that the U.S. is no longer pursuing an independent Palestinian state, suggesting any future Palestinian state should be carved out of a Muslim country, signaling a significant shift in US Middle East diplomacy. Kara Peterson, the acting enforcement director of the CFPB, resigned amid policy shifts under the Trump administration, after serving with the agency since its founding. US journalist Terry Moran was dropped by ABC after calling Trump aide Stephen Miller a world-class hater. The U.S. Trade Representative is weighing further changes to shipping policy, potentially rolling back stricter measures from April to reduce port fees for car carriers and ease restrictions on liquefied natural gas. Tulsi Gabbard, US Director of National Intelligence, warned of warmongers fomenting nuclear war after visiting Hiroshima, echoing Russian talking points on the Ukraine war. The U.S. Embassy in China has tightened its visa policy for children under 14, eliminating the interview-free application process following recent threats to aggressively revoke visas of Chinese students and increase scrutiny of applications. Chinese students attending Harvard face uncertain futures despite the U.S. resuming student visa processing, with a judge temporarily blocking a ban on Harvard's qualification to enroll international students and a hearing set for further argument. The U.S. risks losing global talent due to crackdowns on academia, as immigrant talent is crucial to the country's leading tech companies, including many top AI companies founded by immigrants. China and the U.S. reached a framework deal addressing tariff disputes after 2 days of trade negotiations in London. Premier Li Qiang is urging faster application of new technology to reduce dependence on US tech and build a leading industrial base, emphasizing the importance of connecting innovation and industry to drive new products and services. Mainland Chinese consumers are unimpressed with Apple's latest software redesign, Liquid Glass, as Apple faces growing challenges in the world's largest smartphone market. To offset losses from highest tariffs, Chinese exports to Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, have risen to satisfy consumer markets, with shipments to Vietnam increasing by 18.8%, Thailand by 20.9%, and Indonesia by 16.8%. Ukraine-Russia conflict. Russia launched multiple large-scale drone and missile attacks on Ukraine, including one of the largest air attacks on Kyiv in over 3 years, striking a maternity ward in Odesa and resulting in 3 deaths and 13 injuries, according to Ukrainian officials. The St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv, a UNESCO World Heritage Site symbolizing Ukraine's statehood, was damaged in one attack, leading to repair efforts and concern from UNESCO. Despite U.S. pressure to work toward a ceasefire, Russia has intensified its drone and missile attacks, especially after Ukrainian drones hit Russian air bases. Ukrainian security forces attempted to shoot down Russian drones over Kyiv. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky criticized Donald Trump and others for their lack of response after Russia launched a large-scale attack on Kyiv, hitting 7 of the city's 10 districts with a total of 315 drones and 7 missiles targeting Ukrainian locations. Day 1203 of Russia's war on Ukraine involved key events. Stephen James Hubbard, a U.S. teacher seized by Russia, has been located in a Russian prison, with his family searching for him for months and new text messages casting doubt on his conviction. Russia's war on Ukraine is driving a drone revolution, with both countries employing remotely controlled battles in the air and at sea. Despite its invasion of Ukraine, Russia is expanding its military presence in Africa, circumventing Western sanctions. European Union. The EU is proposing a lower price cap on Russian oil, suggesting a $45 per barrel limit, down from the current $60 to tighten energy and financial sanctions. European Commission. President Ursula von der Leyen seeks greater restrictions on the shadow fleet banks and Nord Stream investment. The European Union unveiled fresh sanctions on Russia, including a ban on Nord Stream, with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announcing a proposal to ramp up pressure on Moscow. European Union officials at a conference in Brazil presented the bloc as a stable partner amidst the US-China rivalry, with Brian Glynn of the European External Action Service stating that the EU wasn't distancing itself from either power. Iran warned of a proportionate response as the IAEA considers censure. US-Iran talks over the Iranian nuclear file are strained, and Israel is threatening to attack Iran's nuclear sites. Southeast Asia. As tariffs are casting a shadow over the green energy industry in Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Chinese exports to Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, have risen to satisfy consumer markets and offset losses from high-US tariffs, with shipments to Vietnam increasing by 18.8%, Thailand by 20.9%, and Indonesia by 16.8%. Caught between the US and China trade war, Southeast Asia could see Europe step in to improve relations with the region. In Gaza, Israeli forces have killed scores of Palestinians, including at least 17 at food distribution sites and over 70 in attacks across Gaza, with a child among 20 killed near Aswan aid centers, as well as displaced people in tents and medics. The Israeli Navy also attacked docks in Yemen's rebel-held port city of Hodeidah, marking the first time Israeli forces have been involved in attacks against the Houthi rebels. The IDF issued an evacuation warning after reports of rockets fired from northern Gaza at southern Israel. Accusations of war crimes have been leveled against Israel by UN experts, citing the obliteration of Gaza's education system and extermination and attacks on Gaza schools and religious sites following an investigation into humanitarian and human rights law violations in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territory. The UK, alongside 4 allies, is sanctioning far-right Israeli ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich with asset freezes and travel bans for inciting violence against Palestinians, while reaffirming their commitment to Israel's security and condemning the October 7, 2023 attack on Israel by Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reported significant progress in talks to release the remaining hostages in Gaza. Omer Shem Tov, an Israeli hostage held for 505 days after the October 7, 2023 attack, credited faith and Jewish rituals with helping him endure his captivity. Greta Thunberg was deported from Israel after the Israeli Navy intercepted the British-flagged yacht Madeline, a Gaza-bound aid boat, and took it to the Israeli port of Ashdod. Thunberg, along with other activists, was attempting to deliver food and medical supplies, organized by a group opposing the blockade of Gaza. Thunberg accused Israel of kidnapping her and fellow activists in international waters for attempting to bring aid to Gaza, stating that they refused to sign a document claiming illegal entry. Upon her arrival in Paris after being deported, she denounced war crimes in Gaza and called for more action to support Gaza aid efforts. A new group called the Popular Forces has emerged in Gaza, allegedly being armed by Israel and presenting themselves as a counter to Hamas's rule of the territory. United States. The deployment of National Guard troops to Los Angeles to manage protests against President Donald Trump's immigration policies has ignited controversy and fiscal concerns. Governor Gavin Newsom criticized the troop mobilization as a military dragnet, while President Trump defended the decision. The troop mobilization is estimated to cost Americans at least $134 million. Representative Betty McCollum questioned Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth about the financial implications. Chinese state media are using the protests to paint the U.S. government as broken and lacking social cohesion. In Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass has instituted a 10-hour curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. within a 1 square mile area of downtown in response to protests against immigration and customs enforcement. ICE, the Los Angeles Police Department, reported over 300 arrests of protesters in the past 2 days. President Trump's speech at Fort Bragg contained false statements and conspiracy theories related to Los Angeles. Malaysia. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has won a reprieve in a civil suit accusing him of sexual misconduct. The Court of Appeal ruled in his favor, allowing him to argue he has legal immunity from the suit filed by his former research assistant, Mohammed Yusuf Rather, who alleges Anwar sexually assaulted him in 2018. Anwar denies the allegations. The court approved Anwar's bid to suspend the trial, which was scheduled to begin the following week. Separately, Malaysia is set to implement a new luxury tax on July 1. The tax, ranging from 5 to 10%, will apply to discretionary and non-essential goods, as well as financial and beauty services and private education, potentially rendering such indulgences unaffordable for many Malaysians. China. Chinese state media are actively using the escalating protests in Los Angeles against President Donald Trump's immigration policies to depict the U.S. government as broken and lacking social cohesion. The SMP daily highlights as China trade talks in London and Chinese state media's portrayal of our protests as proof of a broken America. China's president, Xi Jinping, has urged stronger exchanges with South Korea to safeguard global and regional industrial and supply chains. China is also ready to collaborate with South Africa in opposing global hegemony and bullying. According to Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun, the People's Liberation Army Navy sent 2 aircraft carriers, the Liaoning and Shandong, into the Pacific Ocean for exercises beyond the second island chain. The Shandong was sent into the Pacific for the first time, demonstrating China's ability to project sea and air power far past its home waters. The J-20 stealth fighter has significantly improved its radar detection range due to semiconductor advancements. In trade, the US and China have agreed on a plan to de-escalate trade tensions, which requires approval from leaders in Washington and Beijing. This includes a framework to remove China's export restrictions on rare earth minerals and an agreement to ease export curbs while maintaining a tariff truce. However, Beijing's imposition of rare earth export restrictions from April is intended as a message to Washington ahead of bilateral export control discussion. Eve Energy, China's 5th largest producer of electric vehicle EV, batteries, plans to raise fresh capital on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange for international expansion. Shifting to the Philippines, Filipino forces and villages are facing challenges in the disputed South China Sea due to China's presence. Separately, OpenAI has banned a network of ChatGPT accounts originating from the Philippines that were used to generate social media comments praising President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. In the United States, officials have agreed with China on a plan to de-escalate trade tensions, requiring approval from leaders in Washington and Beijing. This includes a framework to remove China's export restrictions on rare earth minerals and an agreement to ease export curbs while maintaining a tariff truce. The U.S. and China agreed in principle on a framework to carry out an agreement they reached on resolving their trade disputes last month. Chinese state media said after 2 days of talks in London, tensions exist between Washington and Pretoria, amid which Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun stated China is ready to work with South Africa to oppose global hegemony and bullying. Japan is navigating complex international relations and domestic issues. A Japanese stealth frigate, JS Yahagi, has entered Australia to bid for a $6 billion naval contract. Simultaneously, Japan's self-defense forces detected 2 Chinese aircraft carriers in the Pacific for the first time, prompting diplomatic communications with Beijing and considerations for further action. Japan is also facing internal challenges, including staffing shortages for the national census, due to an aging workforce and heightened privacy concerns. A government report pointed to slow progress in bridging the gender gap, especially in leadership positions. In the business sector, Toyota and Daimler's truck divisions are planning a merger to form a major Japanese truck company. Toyota has also proposed selling US-made vehicles in Japan to ease tariff negotiations. Social trends in Japan reveal seniors adopting Pilates for strength, while an amusement center offers rice bags as prizes to combat rising food costs. Security concerns have led to the arrest of a man for allegedly threatening a news outlet in a potential copycat crime. A Yakuza faction is under investigation for possible collaboration with Hong Kong's four-tank triad. Further, a Saitama organization is being investigated for conducting combat drills using toy guns for children. Former ambassador Ichiro Fujisaki advised against isolationist policies like those of Donald Trump at the G7 summit. Thailand is embracing advanced technology for law enforcement. A city in Thailand plans to use AI-driven police drones to find criminals and visa overstayers in an effort to enhance public safety. South Korea saw 2 members of the K-pop group BTS, RM and V, complete their mandatory military service, drawing fans from around the globe to Chuncheon City. The musical Maybe Happy Ending, set in South Korea, received recognition at Broadway's Tony Awards. President Lee Jae-myung, only recently inaugurated, has already initiated action against his predecessor, Yoon Suk-yeol, in a move that could potentially de-escalate tensions. President Lee has requested a cessation of anti-Pyongyang propaganda leaflets, prompting the Unification Ministry to advise civic groups to halt their cross-border activities. The presence of a shallow pool at the presidential residence has become a subject of debate, with claims that it was used by former President Yoon Suk-yeol and his spouse for their animals. China's President Xi Jinping has encouraged President Lee to guide relations with China in the right course, promoting multilateralism and free trade amid growing competition with the United States. The UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand and Norway have jointly imposed sanctions on Israeli ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich for allegedly inciting violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. The sanctions include travel bans and asset freezes and apply to the ministers in their personal capacity. Focusing now on the United Kingdom, Ofcom, the media regulator, has begun 9 investigations into 4chan and several file-sharing services. These investigations concern potential breaches of online safety laws, especially concerning the protection of users from illegal content. TikTok is also expanding its UK operations, opening a new office and adding over 500 jobs, bringing their total UK workforce to 3,000 this year. Meanwhile, the National Farmers Union is expressing growing concern over the increasing availability of cheaper chicken and beef from countries like Australia, Poland, and Uruguay in UK supermarkets due to differing production standards. Morrison's is now selling raw chicken from Poland. Tragically, Ukraine's cities, Kyiv and Odesa, were struck by over 300 Russian drones. These attacks resulted in at least 2 deaths and 13 injuries. Northern Ireland witnessed renewed unrest in Ballymena for 2 straight nights. The violence erupted after a vigil for an alleged sexual assault victim and the subsequent court appearance of 2 14-year-old boys charged in connection with the case. 15 police officers sustained injuries as rioters hurled petrol bombs, fireworks, and masonry. Law enforcement deployed water cannon to quell the disturbances. Investigations are also ongoing into racially motivated attacks on homes and businesses, with some rioters reportedly targeting foreigners and setting houses ablaze. Turning to Ireland and the United Kingdom, survivors of Ireland's mother and baby homes could lose UK benefits if they receive compensation from the Irish government. A campaign is now in motion to change the law, garnering support from UK politicians and celebrities, including Steve Coogan of Anne Filomena fame, a film that explored similar themes. Brazil is currently focused on the trial of Jair Bolsonaro, the former president, who faces coup plotting accusations following his 2022 election defeat. Bolsonaro is testifying before the Supreme Court and could face 40 years imprisonment with 7 other co-accused individuals, if convicted. Simultaneously, Brazil is expediting oil and highway projects in the Amazon, a move drawing criticism as it seemingly contradicts the country's environmental pledges ahead of upcoming UN climate discussions. Brazilian police have also executed arrests of at least 11 individuals in Rio de Janeiro as part of a trafficking operation. Shifting to cultural trends, reborn dolls are becoming increasingly popular, prompting debate and proposed bans in public spaces. In related news, the death of archaeologist Nida Gaidon, aged 92, is being mourned. Her research significantly impacted understanding of early human presence in the Americas and spurred regional development. Colombia is grappling with a surge of violence as coordinated bombings and gun attacks struck Cali and other towns in the Cauca province. These attacks left at least 7 dead and 50 injured. Police posts, municipal buildings, and civilians were targeted. The violence occurred shortly after an assassination attempt on a conservative presidential candidate, escalating political tensions. Australia's Foreign Minister WHAM has stressed the importance of the message behind sanctions. The country is working with international partners to address human rights, concerns regarding Palestinians in the West Bank. In South Australia, a debate among Year 9 students on the tradwife movement has sparked controversy, drawing criticism for potentially undermining women's progress. The number of Australian journalists affected by law enforcement actions while covering immigration protests in Los Angeles has risen to 4, involving reporters from 9, the ABC, and the New York Times. India is grappling with a severe heat wave in its northern regions, with temperatures in Rajasthan soaring to 117 degrees Fa. A new study indicates that India is experiencing an increase in the frequency of extreme weather events. Despite these challenges and ongoing tensions with Pakistan, analysts project that India will maintain robust economic growth. The Reserve Bank of India has cut interest rates to encourage consumption and investment. India was significantly affected by a global ChatGPT outage, with 800 complaints logged on Down Detector. The U.S. Embassy has stated a zero-tolerance policy on visa abuse following an incident at Newark Liberty International Airport involving an Indian student. Argentina's Supreme Court has upheld the corruption conviction against former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. Her 6-year prison sentence is cemented. She also faces a lifetime ban from holding public office, which effectively blocks her planned political comeback. Shifting focus to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing increasing pressure to address rising inflation. Recent economic data indicates a persistent challenge in curbing price increases. The Bank of Canada is expected to announce further measures. These measures aim to cool down the economy and bring inflation back to target level. Meanwhile, in France, nationwide protests continue against President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms. The controversial legislation raises the retirement age from 62 to 64. Unions are leading the demonstrations. Public anger remains high despite government efforts to explain the changes. The reforms are seen as necessary to ensure the long-term sustainability of the pension system. Turning to developments in Germany, the government is grappling with a debate over its energy policy. The Green Party is pushing for a faster transition to renewable energy sources. However, concerns remain about energy security and affordability. The coalition government is seeking a balance between environmental goals and economic stability. The closure of the last nuclear power plants has further intensified the discussion. In the latest from India, the government has announced a new initiative to boost domestic manufacturing. The Make in India 2 program aims to attract foreign investment. Later, it also seeks to create jobs and reduce reliance on imports. The initiative focuses on key sectors such as electronics, pharmaceuticals, and automobiles. Incentives include tax breaks and streamlined regulatory processes. Syria's path to post-war economic recovery will necessitate significant international assistance, according to the International Monetary Fund, IMF. This marks the first visit by the IMF to Syria since 2009, signaling a potential shift in international engagement. Turning to North Korea, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, suspects the nation is constructing a new uranium enrichment facility. IAEA Director Rafael Grossi reported that the agency is observing the construction of a new building exhibiting characteristics similar to existing uranium enrichment plants. This action is consistent with Kim Jong-un's stated goals of increasing fuel production to expand North Korea's nuclear arsenal. Malta saw Robert Agius and Jamie Vella sentenced to life imprisonment for providing the car bomb used in the 2017 assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia, a journalist known for her anti-corruption work. This conviction is a major development in the pursuit of justice for her death. Germany is grappling with concerns over right-wing extremism, as the Federal Police Commissioner expressed strong disapproval of police officers affiliating with the Alternative for Germany, AfD, party. This stance follows reports from the nation's domestic spy agency highlighting a surge in crime linked to right-wing extremism and an increasing presence of extremists within the AfD's ranks, raising questions about potential conflicts of interest and the integrity of law enforcement. Meanwhile, in South Korea, RM and V, 2 prominent members of the internationally acclaimed K-pop group BTS, have successfully completed their mandatory military service and were discharged from a South Korean base on Wednesday, marking a significant moment for their devoted fans. The 2 musicians, clad in military fatigues, were greeted by supporters upon their departure. The remaining 3 members of BTS are expected to conclude their national service obligations later this month, paving the way for the group's potential reunion and future activities. France is actively involved in international diplomacy and experiencing domestic challenges. At the UN Ocean Conference in France, a surge of ratifications moved the High Seas Treaty closer to the 60-country threshold required for it to become effective. In a separate diplomatic effort, President Emmanuel Macron met with Palestinian Authority. President Mahmoud Abbas, who affirmed that Hamas must leave Gaza. Macron outlined conditions for potential French recognition of a Palestinian state at an upcoming UN conference. Domestically, a 14-year-old student in eastern France fatally stabbed a school employee during a bag check, highlighting concerns about school safety and security. Transitioning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced new measures aimed at boosting the country's artificial intelligence sector. The government is investing millions to attract and retain AI talent, hoping to position Canada as a global leader in AI research and development. This initiative follows concerns about skilled workers leaving for opportunities in the United States and other countries. In the United Kingdom, the political landscape is dominated by discussions surrounding the upcoming general election. Conservative and Labour parties are intensely debating economic policy, with the Conservatives emphasising tax cuts and Labour focusing on public service investment. Recent polls suggest a tightening race, increasing the pressure on both leaders to deliver compelling messages. The Bank of England has kept interest rates steady, further complicating the economic debate. The detention of Senegalese-Italian TikTok star Kaby Lame at ICE at Harry Reid International Airport sparked debate. Lau, a UNICEF Goodwill ambassador, was held for allegedly overstaying his visa. He was ultimately permitted to depart the U.S. without facing deportation, an outcome that contrasted with the stricter immigration policies enacted during President Trump's administration. Austria is reeling from a school shooting in Graz that left at least 10 dead. The 21-year-old gunman, a former student, took his own life after opening fire at a local high school. Authorities have confirmed that the shooter acted alone, but the motive behind the horrific act remains unclear. North Korea is under close watch by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, as construction proceeds on a new facility bearing resemblance to uranium enrichment plants. According to IAEA Director Rafael Grossi, the agency is keenly observing developments at the site, noting its alignment with Kim Jong-un's stated goals of expanding nuclear weapon fuel production. China's technological landscape remains a key focus, with Huawei founder and CEO Ren Zhengfei acknowledging that the company's chip technology still trails the United States by one generation. Across the Pacific, in the United States, political discourse is heating up, as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio strongly condemned the decision to impose sanctions on 2 Israeli ministers, a sentiment echoed by a top official from the Trump administration. The United Kingdom, alongside Canada, has levied sanctions against Israeli Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. These actions reflect growing international concern regarding Israel's policies, especially considering the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Shifting focus to legal matters in the United States, a U.S. appeals court has upheld the tariffs imposed by former President Trump on imports from key trading partners. This ruling affects Canada, China, and Mexico, ensuring the tariffs remain active while the appeals process unfolds. In a dire situation unfolding in London, Laila Soueif, 69, is in critical condition after a 250-day hunger strike protesting the imprisonment of her son, activist Alaa Abdel Fattah, in Egypt. Alaa's sister, Mona Saif, has spoken about the toll of imprisonment on her brother. She also highlights her mother's resolve, even as she grapples with the life-threatening nature of Soueif's protest. Diplomatic efforts are intensifying to secure Alaya's freedom. Myanmar guerrillas have claimed responsibility for shooting down a military junta fighter jet. The jet was allegedly involved in attacks on ground targets. However, state media has attributed the incident to mechanical failure. The United States is seeing fewer African students enrolling in its universities. Stricter visa policies introduced under the Trump administration are a contributing factor. Many students are now choosing Chinese universities instead. China provides government scholarships and lower tuition fees. Their visa processes are also more accessible. This shift may indicate changing educational influence among the US, Africa, and China. Serbia is grappling with political turmoil after recent local elections in 2 towns were overshadowed by accusations of irregularities and heightened tensions. Further complicating matters in the country, a proposed Trump-branded hotel in Belgrade, supported by Jared Kushner, is facing opposition from preservationists who are worried about the project's impact on the historical importance of the location. Greece is currently experiencing political turbulence as a court ruling ousted 3 far-right MPs from the neo-fascist Spartans Party. The decision was based on evidence of electoral fraud. It was found that the convicted ex-leader of Golden Dawn had exerted undue influence over the Spartans Party, compromising the integrity of the election. The removal of these members reduces the number of occupied seats in the 300-seat parliament to 297, potentially impacting legislative processes. Pakistan has increased defense spending by 20% amid tensions with India and economic challenges, even as overall expenditures decrease. Turning to Turkey, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has adopted an Islamist-leaning foreign policy aimed at strengthening ties with Muslim-majority nations while balancing ideology with pragmatic considerations. In Romania, Greenpeace Romania is facing legal action from the state gas firm Romgaz, which seeks to shut down the environmental organization. Thailand is deploying AI-powered police drones in Pattaya to identify and apprehend criminals and visa, overstaying rising crime rates. Regarding Venezuela, an appeals court has temporarily blocked an order that would have provided due process to deported Venezuelans following the deportation of Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador without hearings in March. From the Philippines, OpenAI has banned a network of ChatGPT accounts originating for generating social media comments, praising President Ferdinand Marcos, Jane R. Thorntal Wall. Shifting to South Africa, heavy rain and snow caused flooding in eastern and southern provinces, resulting in at least 7 deaths, including school children. In New Zealand, Foreign Minister Winston Peters has urged Pacific nations to unite against external forces attempting to coerce, cajole, and constrain the region. Clashes continue in Indonesia between the military and the armed wing of the Free Papua movement, with further reports of civilian casualties in West Papua. The Sudanese army has accused Libya's Haftar of participating in a joint border attack with the RSF, marking the first alleged direct Libyan involvement in the ongoing war in Sudan. In Papua New Guinea, a study of early Pacific migrants by Otago universities, Dr. Monica Trump could provide insights into understanding health history. Mexico is turning away Colombians at its border due to reports that drug cartels are recruiting former Colombian soldiers. Tragically, in Kenya, at least 5 Qatar-based Indian nationals died in a road accident, while 27 others were injured. Yemen's Houthi rebels claim that Israel attacked docks in the port city of Odesa, although there has been no immediate confirmation. On a global scale, a recent Pew report highlights the impact of religious disaffiliation and population growth on the global religious landscape. Additionally, more than 50 artists and fans are boycotting a European festival due to its ties with a pro-Israel hedge fund. And NPR discussed the parallels in the domestic policies of Hungary and the U.S. In Italy, a referendum on citizenship failed to gain traction, with low voter turnout bolstering Meloni's position. Finally, Samoans living abroad must complete their voter registration by July 4 to participate in the upcoming election. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.